Easing of trade tensions, it seems, at least for now, between the US and China. Washington says tariffs are on hold after Beijing pledged to significantly increase its purchases of American goods and services. Let's bring our China correspondent Tom Mackenzie, who's watching this. And Tom, it feels like a marked change in tone, some positivity from both sides, really.
Yeah, Heidi, certainly a change in the posturing from Beijing and Washington. As you say, we heard some pretty positive comments from the US side and also from Beijing's envoy during these talks, Liu He, who talked about constructive talks with his US counterparts over 2 days. And of course, crucially, what we appear to be seeing is the US pulling its trigger finger off the trigger when it comes to the threat of imposing tariffs on $150 billion worth of Chinese imports. Take a listen to US Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin speaking earlier.
We're putting the trade war on hold. So right now we have agreed to put the tariffs on hold while we try to execute the framework. The president has been very clear since the first meeting with President Xi in Mar-a-Lago that we are going to reduce the trade deficit. We have an agreement with China that they will substantially agree to it.
So both sides put out a statement where they also committed to work more closely together on intellectual property and also to increase the trade in manufactured goods. What this doesn't mark, though, is a significant shift in the policies coming out of Beijing. They have long talked of the desire to increase the imports of US agricultural products and energy products and services. They've committed to that again and said that they're going to ramp up those imports. But that is something that Beijing has talked about for quite some time, it should be noted.
That's one thing which is left unresolved. There's quite a lot else, isn't there, Tom? And there seems to be a lot of headlines, but not that much substance.
Well, certainly one crucial topic that wasn't resolved was this suggestion by Larry Kudlow, the chief economic advisor, of course, to President Trump, who said on Friday that China had committed to reducing the surplus by $200 billion US. Well, what we didn't get was any clarity on that because, of course, we heard from Chinese state media suggestions that that wasn't a commitment that Beijing had signed up to, and we didn't get that in the joint statement. So no dollar number. And even if we did have that $200 billion commitment, we don't have any clarity on exactly how the two sides are going to achieve that. There was also no mention of the US demands that China stop subsidizing its Made in China 2025 policy or strategy around things like electric vehicles and artificial intelligence, and also no mention of China's demand that the US treat investments into the US from Chinese firms more equally. So a number of key issues that remain unresolved, as you say.
Tom, the thing is, where do we actually go from here? That's kind of not been resolved properly.
Well, in terms of the practical steps, we're expecting Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross to head over here to Beijing to try to hammer out some of these details with his China counterparts in the next few weeks. We should also bear in mind that, of course, North Korea is potentially a factor that weighs on these discussions, and both sides probably wanting to be having a stronger relationship ahead of this potential June the 12th meeting between the US president and the leader of North Korea in Singapore. The other factor, of course, is the domestic politics in the US with the midterm elections coming up. But yes, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross is expected to be here. We heard from Eswar Prasad, by the way, who talked to our colleagues at Bloomberg News earlier, saying that this was going to be a brief de-escalation in tensions likely between China and Beijing, saying that they have resulted in these recent talks in at best a temporary standing down by both sides. So that's a view that's been echoed by a number of analysts that we've been speaking to.